sometimes I really hate architecture because that was also killing it.
So there are days that I have to excuse myself that, I can't go to the gym today, I have to focus on this.
And I think one of my biggest regret as an architecture student when I was doing my undergrad was I was never able to go and explore Nepal. Today we have architecture Candy.
So I come from an architecture background. I studied back in India, and I am also the founder of Architecture Candy, which is a visual communication focused platform on Instagram. And it kind of grew quite large in the last few years, almost 190K on Instagram. But also from my professional experience, I also hold a master's degree in urban design. But last year, I quit my job and I started my own urban design studio, and I'm currently working on my own projects.
It's time to talk about your immigrant journey as well, because you traveled like the whole different part of the world to the London.
And the only wallpaper I used to put was London, like Big Ben. Like really, I just did a very brief research on universities, very brief research, and I came up when I did my master's. We did not have any visa, which would let students to stay back in the country.
Let's talk about like what inspired you to start Architecture Candy, which are helping other people to do their portfolio.
And to my surprise, I did not have to work really hard on content. I was just doing what I was liking.
Is there any kind of website or anything which could tell like the range of salary for an architect in the UK? The person behind Architecture Candy, Vishakha Tiwari. And I feel like this conversation was so much fun and so much of takeaways for architecture students or anyone who is looking for a job, preparing portfolios, and so on. So I think on the first part of the video, we talked about Vishakha's journey on how she thought of starting Architecture Candy. And then we talked a little bit more in detail about what a good portfolio should look like in her opinion. And also, we have a very interesting takeaway at the end. I showed my portfolio to Vishaka and got some insights of how I can improve on my portfolio. So she's currently based in the UK, and we talked about the master's experience in the UK and how she applied there, and what are the things that an international students need to think before applying for master's or any kind of a study in the UK. And we talked about that immigrant experience as well as how to present a good portfolio and so many other takeaways. So I hope you guys will have fun in this conversation, and let's go to the podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my Arc Stories podcast. And this is Srijan. And we have a very special guest today. And I'm really happy to have her because initially when I just messaged her, I think I talked about in one of the podcasts, like you just need to ask. And that's what I did. On this one, I just shoot an email and I was so glad that she replied. And I'm very happy to have her today. So let's go to our guest. Hi, Vishaka. Could you please introduce yourself and tell our audience about yourself?
Hi, Srijan. Thank you for calling me on the podcast. I'm really excited to be here. Sorry about my voice. I think I have some issue with my throat in the last few days. So, but apart from that, I just want to explain a bit about my background, like where I come from. So I come from an architecture background. I studied back in India, and I am also the founder of Architecture Candy, which is a visual communication focused platform on Instagram. And primarily on Instagram, that's where my audience is. And I started this platform during COVID a few years back. I think it's going to be almost 5 years now since I started that. It started as something very specifically for just doing some visual graphics or renderings, drawing representations. And it kind of grew quite large in the last few years, almost 190K on Instagram. And Pinterest, and I also have some presence on LinkedIn. So, like, I think that's what my background towards non-architecture, conventional architecture, what I've been doing. But also from my professional experience, I also hold a master's degree in urban design. and I'm also an urban designer. And I've worked as an urban designer back in India, also in London at Gensler for the past 2 years. And but last year I quit my job and I started my own urban design studio. And I'm currently working on my own projects, starting up small to large mixed use master plan projects, and more towards urban design and public realm projects. So that's a bit about my platform, my educational background, and currently what I'm doing.
Mhm. So yes, let's go a little bit deep into your journey of architecture candy, because I think I found about architecture candy when I was back in Nepal. You said you started
Oh,
during COVID, right? So I think I was in Nepal during that time, and like when I saw your illustrations and all, and actually that also I think helped me to build my portfolio at that time, because I was applying for masters, and I came to the US in fall 2021. So I think I was working on my portfolio before that time. So I
yeah.
think you were also one of your page was also one of the inspiration for me to start working on my portfolio. So let's talk about like what inspired you to start Architecture Candy, which are helping other people to do their portfolio.
Amazing. Thank you for letting me know that. And I'm so glad that it helped you in whatever ways I could. So, yeah, I think my main inspiration to start Architecture Candy was because I always was inclined towards like visual communication and architecture graphics primarily because I always thought how you visually represent can change the game of whatever you're designing. And I realized that I'm very keen on improving my skills on graphics during my final year in my bachelor's degree back in India. And at the time, I mean, I had very limited resources because the only resource at the time I had was Pinterest. And I knew a bit about Photoshop. So I was just trying to bridge the gaps between the drawings I was looking at Pinterest and just doing the same thing on Photoshop. So I was self taught during that point. It wasn't the best, I would say. Obviously, looking back at the drawings now, I don't see that they were really great. But I think there were limited resources which could teach you the workflows of how to achieve those because I saw not just myself but my peers struggling with that part and keeping it towards the end. Representation of drawings is just supposed to be towards the end. And also there were like really huge gaps on how do you represent your conceptual graphics because also being even though I was doing architecture school, I was really never good at hand drawings or hand sketches. So I thought like that's not my cup of tea. I should look at something else to explain my concept graphics. But I was always struggling with that. And I think it was during my professional years and my master's, I started learning a little bit about architecture graphics and more about how to represent different scales of drawings, different types of drawings, and using different software. And when I came to London for my master's, I saw other people's portfolios and I could see how professional they looked. And I think the subcontinent, the style of graphics we use in subcontinent is very different from what people use in the West. I think the idea of representation is completely different. So that's what I thought that I should bridge that gap. And when starting Architecture Candy, just before starting Architecture Candy, I had quit my job as an urban designer in CBRE back in India in Pune. So I was actually doing nothing. And at the time, I saw somebody else taking some other workshops. So I thought, you know what, I can also take workshops on Photoshop because I think my graphics are good enough. I could teach that. So I started the page with the intention of taking workshops and I was just exploring different styles and posting that on the page as well. Also letting people know that I also take workshops. And it started out very small. I still remember it was the last, I think, week of May in 2020. And I was sort of, it was like 8 to 10 people I taught about the plans. And they were like both my seniors from college to my juniors from college as well. So it was a really nice experience taking those 2 days workshop. And I really enjoyed thoroughly, like, and then they produced some graphics and they started using those tools in their own work. So I think that gave me quite a lot of joy to see if what I taught has been implemented and how they are using that in their own work. That's when I just kept going on. And I knew that I have to share it with a wider audience. And to my surprise, I did not have to work really, really hard on content. I was just doing what I was liking. And because it was COVID, the platform grew very, very quickly and rapidly. And people were like asking me, how are you getting all these followers? And like, are you getting paid or something? My friends were calling me who did not usually talk to me, but they were calling me and they were like, oh, how are you getting these followers? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just posting that and I've just gotten to know about how Instagram is working and I'm just doing that. It's just helping me, all those things. Like, to be honest, like I did not have any plan as such on growing that, but I think it grew because of both the reasons. One, it was something new, which a lot of people were not doing at the time. Obviously now there's a lot many people and not many architecture content creators out there, but at the time it wasn't as many. And then also I think I was teaching. I started putting my content in a way that it's also educational for people who are not coming from my workshops. I started putting some informative content out there. So I think that's when it started to grow a little better. And I think I expanded towards my knowledge, like in terms of other software like Adobe Illustrator. And I was also talking about portfolios because at the time I was also revamping my own portfolio as well. So there were like a lot of things I was doing with my portfolio and I was sharing that with my community. I also created the templates which I used at the time for my own portfolio. I shared with my community and a lot of people really liked it. So I think this is exactly like what I was doing. I was sharing it out there, whatever I was liking, whatever I thought like, okay, people would really find this interesting. So I was just trying to bridge the gap from what I did not have during my 5 years of architecture, college, and the bachelor's degree. I was just trying to bridge that gap during with the content, and I'm still doing that, and it's still working there. Like I think now I don't take workshops anymore. I do have my courses now, online courses, self-paid courses. But it really gives me joy that what I teach, people can apply, and then they share their work. So it's really fulfilling.
Mhm. So when you talked about like the idea of representation in the Western world and then in our South Asian region, so what
Mm.
exactly do you find the difference?
I think there. So it's quite a very evident difference if you see the drawings. But to put it in like the right words, I think I might not do the justice there. But I would like to say is like the choice of colors is one thing which is really really different back in India or back subcontinent or non-Western countries. I would say. I think their idea of really nice graphics is very different from people I saw here in Europe and in the UK, and to a certain extent in the US as well. So that's something which I saw, the color, the choice of colors. And I think hierarchy is something, using hierarchy with the help of colors as tools. That is something which I don't think we are taught in the college. Nobody is taught, like we are choosing colors on the go. And I think the choice of colors is one primary difference which I see. And I also see it's because because we don't really involve a lot of graphic design knowledge during the education. I think that lack kind of is visible during the portfolio as well. How the portfolios are created, are we using that sophistication or that level of hierarchy, visual understanding of graphic elements, etc. So I feel like that lack of information and knowledge kind of gets carried forward in the portfolios as well. The other thing which I find really different is like the use of white space or the negative space. I would say that's another second key or giveaway that which part of the world, have you studied architecture or something of that sort. Because if I look at even the presentation boards created here or anywhere else, like in the West, something, but I think there is a structure, we are following a structure, even though it's not having a lot of white space. I think there's still some structure to it. But the portfolios, on the other hand, when you see, I actually learned it from a peer of mine who was also studying urban design back in Westminster in London. So he told me that there are different types of portfolios you can make. You don't have to really make one type of portfolio and just put everything which you have created, like just put everything on the page. You can make it either editorial, a little bit more like photo book, or sort of. So that's when I realized, okay, there's not one way to create portfolio. There are multiple other ways to create portfolios. And a lot of people here take inspiration from the magazines or editorial stuff. Rather than back in India, I remember there was, during just before our internship, there was actually like a workshop sort of a thing, and a couple of alumni were called in to share their experience, and they were just reviewing some of the portfolio. And if they saw some white space on our portfolio pages, I remember very clearly that they said, "Oh, it looks empty. You should fill it with something in." So that's what I mean, and that's how I created my portfolio. Like I never put any white space in it, and that's the portfolio I created for my masters as well. Even though I got in my master's degree with that portfolio, coming back and seeing others' portfolio suddenly made my portfolio look very juvenile or very, very immature to say, like with a lot of colors, no space, and no hierarchy. So something that kind of hit me quite hard. That even though I'm in like different part of the world, like the portfolios are also need to be specific to which part of the world you're in. So I think that's where I started recognizing more on international standards, and that's when I started looking up at what's happening, not just in my country or my city or my peer or my college people, like what other people are doing. So I think that is something a lot of people in subcontinent like lack, that a like broader understanding of what's happening and how people are like progressing in their visual communication, I would say.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that totally makes sense to me because when you were talking about those points like colors and white space, it was kind of giving me all the memory of my portfolio, which
Yeah.
looks so bad. And my portfolio, when I started applying for my internship, I still remember my resume. It used to have
Mm.
color like dark blue and then some grays, and maybe I will share it somewhere around in this video. You guys will see it. And then on that resume, I thought that was a really good at that time because my experience, my research, it was mostly Pinterest. And then when I was
Yeah.
doing research, you could only find from the region. Like you won't find from the western part. And even if you
Mm.
find it, the challenges was at that point was like I just knew Photoshop. I didn't know
Yeah.
anything about Illustrator or InDesign. And then when I moved here, then I started realizing like, okay, these are the other kind of softwares that helps with the workflow of what we actually want to achieve and which you are calling the international standard. Because
Yeah.
like only with Photoshop, it's basically image based, and you cannot really prepare drawings and stuff on that because you need some help from Illustrator for that, which I had no
Yeah.
idea at that point. And I
Yeah.
think those are some of the gaps that were there. I don't know if it's still
Hmm.
there or not because I've seen like a couple of portfolios and which are getting into that international standard, but I
Yeah.
think there's still some room for improvement.
Definitely. I think, no, I think with the use of Instagram now and coming up with all these Instagram pages from all over the part of the world, and how much like the trends have also changed. Like, because I've been on Instagram for 5 years. So I've seen like how the trends have also been changing and updating, like the kind of drawings. Some kind of drawings are like very universal, and the style which you can do like 10 years back, and you can, I'm sure after 10 years also, like they will still be like very universal. So there's that kind of style of drawings, like very minimal, very sophisticated, and doesn't have those flash, like, sort of thing in that. But then on the other hand, there were like some trends, like using certain collage, certain things. So I think that's also caught up during the last few years, that people started exploring little alternate ways of use of software to explain the spaces, etc. So I think with that, obviously there is a lot of people catching up on that and then seeing what's happening and then improving their work, because essentially everyone I know of, like, everyone, the people coming for my mentorship, etc. So they all look for masters or getting a job abroad. So they also know that they have to create the portfolio to level up their work to international candidates. So I think so definitely they are working towards it, and I think and like social media has created a good balance in there, just to see how people in the other parts of the world are working on it. But I guess, like, still there are a lot of people find challenging on utilizing the best of the software. So as you said, like, even I just knew Photoshop, so I made my whole portfolio on Photoshop. I would say. Uh, Even for my job in CBRE, I would say, like, I used a little bit of InDesign, but I wasn't using InDesign as much for portfolio. I was using Photoshop for each and everything. And I think it's
I
also
know. Yeah.
the way you use software is also very different. So, yeah, but I think after Architecture Candy, obviously, I also learned quite a lot. Like, I improved heavily on my skills as well, and how I use the portfolio, how I use software like Photoshop. So I think the workflow is something which I really heavily focused on creating smarter workflows. So even though drawings, if you're making on pixel based, as you said, like Photoshop is a pixel based software, the quality it can still give you as a vector based software like Illustrator. So I think there are ways to go about it, but I guess, like, people don't have those workflows on hand. Like, it's the same software I can use to make one plan and somebody else for another plan. So it's the same software, same set of tools. It's just the way you're using it that makes a lot of difference. But yeah, I think now people are recognizing more software towards visual communication, and they know the importance of it by now. So I think it's good that if they are investing on learning new software and tools for that.
Mhm. Let's talk a little bit about Architecture Candy's graph, I would say, in terms of like how it grew and everything. So when were you like kind of felt like, okay, now I'm serious about it. Like now I need to do something more. Like when you felt like that.
I think it wasn't. It was after a long time I created Architecture Candy. So I would say when I started it, I think it was 2020 when the lockdown was just happened. 2020 May 2020, I started it, and then I was just taking workshops throughout. Like, so the lockdown ended towards the end of the year. And a lot of people was telling me, like, because at the time I was also trying to find a job in India, like in the initial first few months. As I said, like, I'd quit my job in March, and then I was just at home, and then I was trying to find a job on the side. I was updating my portfolio. So, and Architecture Candy was still going on the side. I was taking workshops. It was still going very well. I was taking like 2 to 3 workshops in a month because it was full at the time. Like, I'd had a lot of demand at the time. A lot of people were at home. So a lot of people, even my peers and my friends at the time, were telling me that, what's your plan now? Because once the lockdown will end, you might, students go back to college. They might not attend your workshops, etc. So I was like, okay, yeah, I need to find a job. And then I was obviously looking for jobs at the time. Nobody was hiring. I got a few interviews, and in the interviews, I told them about Architecture Candy. And they, like, I remember one of the interviews in one of the, like, biggest urban design firm back in India. And she asked me, the interviewer, so why do you want to work as an urban designer? This is going pretty well for you. You're taking workshops, you have a page. And at the time, I had really good number of following as well. So she was asking about, why do you want to work? I said, like, yeah, urban design is my passion. So I can have multiple passions and I can work on them. That's not something restricted, but I still would like to work. And so they asked me my salary expectations, and I think that's where they said, "Oh, that's too high for us." And obviously, I did not get through in that job because of obvious reasons. But yeah, I think that's when I realized that working in India will not make any sense for me because of what I'm working towards. I really need to come back to London. So I was still not taking Architecture Candy seriously at the time. I was still thinking that this is just something on the go, side on the side, etc. But I think in February or March of 2021. That's when I thought, okay, this is not slowing down. This is growing, and I would be like stupid if I don't work on it. So that's when I started a website of my own. So that's when I got a website, and that's when I started working a little bit more seriously on Architecture Candy, how I can define the offerings, how I can define the workshops. Started offering a bit more on longer duration workshops like portfolio mentorship, where I was mentoring people, a small batch of like 10 people for portfolios for over a month. And we used to have one-on-one sessions. We used to have sessions on different software. So that's when I realized, okay, this I could take up very seriously. And also on the side, I was working towards getting back to UK so that I can pursue my job or my further career here. Because in the meantime, I realized that I might want to move back to London once again. Like I can't stay back in India. So I was working out towards that. And yeah, I think it was in October 2021, I moved back to London, and Architecture Candy was still going on. I still had a website and everything, and I think yeah, that was great. And then in 2022, I started working as an urban designer, and I was still working on Architecture Candy on the side. And I think it was a bit difficult 2 years working a full time job and managing a platform of that huge. So I did take content creation a little slower during those years, and very mindful about the workshops also. I was still taking workshops. I was still engaging in a lot of other activities like teaching in universities. I was called for guest lecturing in universities in the UK. So there were a lot of things going on the side, but I think it became a little difficult during the two full-time job years, I would say.
Mhm.
So yeah.
That I think I completely see myself that right now, because I'm also trying to manage my act stories alongside my job. And so even talking about your Architecture Candy, so do you have a team or are you working alone?
So Architecture Candy and the content I create, it's completely me. So that's just me throughout the 5 years. But I also have a team. So because I also do urban design projects, I've always had commission projects on the side, like because architecture can be not just an because a lot of people know it as a educational platform for courses, workshops, and resources, etc. But I also used to get a lot of projects as well on the side about architecture graphics. So throughout those 5 years, I've actually done quite a lot of projects on the side related to architecture and graphics. And that's so I have a team. I have another urban designer. So she's working with me since I think 4 years now. So she started working with me quite early on because I needed her help on certain projects, and she was also a workshop attendee of mine at the time. So it was really nice that she knew the style I work on and knew what I work like. So she joined me as a freelancer, I would say. And then I think almost 1.5 years back, I had to hire a virtual assistant as well because managing workshops, managing emails, and the admin stuff of Architecture
Yeah.
Candy with the full-time job was really, really consuming because my weekends used to go completely on doing that. And then I had different platforms to manage as well, like Pinterest and my LinkedIn page, etc. So I think I hired a virtual assistant 1.5 years back, again, remote. She's still working with me, so that's amazing. I also have a couple of other people working for different freelance tasks. So that's the team I have built. But apart from like, obviously my urban design team is different. I engage with architects and designers on the project basis on that. But related to Architecture Candy, I think these are the two people who really, really helped me in the past few years, I think. So, but content wise, I still take up the whole authority on that because I
Yeah.
also like it because that's like something my creative outlet. So I always had the creative control of that. A lot of people told me that I should, hire a social media agency because of the notifications and because of the DMs and like how do I manage and everything. But I never wanted to do that because I think it's the control freak inside of me which says no. would not let go of control of at least the Instagram part of it. I still like to talk to people, like, answer their queries if it is. So I think it makes me feel that, I'm connected to my community.
Mhm.
If I outsource that, I think then it won't serve the purpose, because that's not what I want to create. Like, it's not a just a page or a customer support sort of a thing. It's more like one on one. People could ask me questions, I can answer them. So I think it just makes me feel more connected to the community.
So
Yeah,
yeah, even I feel the same when I'm talking with people in my page, because they
yeah,
reach out to me about like, okay, we want to come to the US, and what's your recommendation, like what our portfolio should look like, or any sorts of questions like that. And I'm always
mm,
happy to help with any kind of questions as much as I can, because sometimes it gets really overwhelming. Like, I have a job to do, and then like I
yeah.
cannot really like keep messaging all the time. But yeah, I totally get that part as well. Like, it's so much. It feels like really great when you see someone really grow after your help, because like I
Yes.
even mentored some people as well,
Hmm.
and then when they said like they got into the college and all, I'm like, okay, that's great, because like they
Yeah.
I know their journey and path. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a different kind of feeling.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
talking about managing job and architecture, Candy. So how do you really manage time? Like, do you have any format, for example, like making routine or anything like that?
So yeah, I don't do a job anymore. That's
Hmm.
one of the reasons I quit my job, is because I wanted to start my own, urban design company and urban design studio. So, but I was working 2 full years, and at the time, Architecture Candy and some other projects I was undertaking, the graphic projects, and as I said, like some university lecturing. So there were a lot of things happening on the side, and I think so. At the time when I started the job, it was a hybrid job, which means work from home for some days, and then you can go in the office for the rest of the days. So it was quite helpful, because I used to wake up pretty early before work. I That's something, I think the initial few hours of when I wake up, I find myself very much in control of things, and I feel more creative at the time. So I used to spend those hours during doing my work, doing producing some content, etc. So I used to spend some hours in the mornings, and then obviously on the weekends as well. So I think throughout my 2 years working at my job, I there was never a weekend I slept in. Like, I always, over the weekends also, I used to wake up pretty early, 6, 7, and like work throughout, because over the weekends I also used to have workshops, which started around like 2:12 afternoon or something. So in the morning hours, I had to prepare for the workshops, emails, communication, everything. So I have to take care of those things as well. So I think that's mostly of the weekends and early morning hours were very helpful for me during my job time. And I think that's something which pretty helped me quite a lot. And then towards the evening, I used to go to the gym. So I'm not a morning gym person, but I'm a morning person. So I think that's what I used to do. But I think over the time, when the job was demanding and, like, became a little bit more consuming, because they were asking people to come in every day, etc. So I think it took that, I would say, more than 1.5. I think more than 2 hours, because 1 hour traveling, 1 hour getting in.
Yeah.
So 2 hours of my morning used to go in that. So there's no way that I could work on those days on anything else. And I understand that how it is, but also, like, I felt very, like, dissatisfied with that when on those days, because I know that it's the whole day has gone by now, and I don't feel as much productive as I should be, because I was in a very hyper productive mode for so many
Hmm.
years. So when you suddenly don't do a lot many of those tasks,
Hmm.
you feel non unproductive, So I think that was also taking a toll on my mental health. And I think I had to take a decision very soon, like what I need to do. Like, do I have to completely give in, because it's not sustainable in the long run. Like, you could do it. I was managing, because I was not posting as much on Instagram, because I did not have time, but I was still taking workshops, because workshops were on the weekends. So I was picking and choosing things which were manageable. But I think in the long run, it wasn't very sustainable. And I think the reason why I quit my job is because obviously the fulfillment you seek in the job certain times is not what you need. Like it's not giving you as much fulfillment on those days. So I think my drive was to make more impact, as you said, like correctly, like when you were mentioning, like it's a very different feeling when you actually help somebody. So during initial few years of architecture candy, I was still doing that. I was talking to people. There were people who wanted to talk to me on the phone. So on the phone, I've spoken to a lot many people, like simply just guiding them through their journey of either doing masters or applying for masters or like finding a job, etc. So I was still like random people used to call me also, and I was doing that. So I could see the impact I was making, and I think in the job I started to feel that impact. That impact is not as high. Like whatever work you're doing, it's not that impactful. So eventually, I think that was my drive at the time to start my own so that I could impact more people because I'm already impacting a lot of other people in the other industries. So why not do that in other, like in my urban design as well? So I think, yeah, so that's how I managed. I barely
Yeah.
managed, I would say, as Michael Scott said.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think I think
somehow
that's
I
complete.
managed.
Yeah, yeah, but I think it's like extreme hard work for a certain amount of time so that you can go and work for something that you really like. Because
Yes.
for 2 years you have to work extremely hard for two jobs because you have to manage your
Yeah.
life, you got to get your bills
Mm,
paid and everything.
correct.
So yeah, and for me it's kind of similar. I what I
Mm,
do is I used to do in the morning, but then I realized like I want my morning to be a little bit slow, so I started waking up at like 6 something and then like prepare my meal for the day and just
mm,
plan out my day, because I felt like if I do something in the morning then I will start having that pressure in my mind that okay, I gotta
yeah.
finish something. Or so I started taking my morning a little bit slowly, but then
Mm,
after, like when I'm done from my work, I go to my gym directly. So I carry my gym bag on my car, so I don't have
yeah.
any kind of a feeling that I cannot go, so I cannot skip. And then I will just go
Yeah.
to gym directly after that. And then when I come back, I will have my dinner. And then I will have my uninterrupted time after that, like from 7 to 10 or 8 to 10, whatever time. So
Yeah.
I realized like having that time for deep work. I was reading this book called Deep Work. So that gave me that idea about it. So I used to read a couple of books about productivity. So there was this idea of the time blocking method, and that's what
Mm,
I'm doing currently. It's like blocking my
wow.
time for 7 to 9 in the evening completely for my
Mm,
own YouTube stuff or whatever, like my own thing. And then like other times for other thing. But that also I realized like sometimes you have that feeling of getting perfectionism. So that
yeah.
was also killing it. Did you ever had that? Because I realized like when you have that written on your calendar or somewhere, and then you'll be like, oh, if I miss that, then you will have really bad feeling the next day or whatever. So have you ever faced that?
I mean, I won't call myself a perfectionist because I do make a lot of mistakes, to be really honest. Like, I do make a lot of mistakes, and most of the time, so I stopped that. Like, I was being too hard on myself for the longest time in the beginning. Like, oh, I need to do that, I need to do that. But then I somewhere I realized that, you know what, like, it doesn't really matter. Like, as far as I'm consistent and as far as I'm like doing my bits and pieces, I think it's fine. So in terms of work, that's what I did. I wasn't very like I wasn't perfectionist, I would say. But I think in the other parts of the, like as you said, more on the productivity side of things, when I don't do certain things and you feel unproductive and you feel that pressure onto you, you're completely right. I think I do used to feel that, and I think that's one thing as a self, like there's a different thing in a job when there's a pressure on the job, because you know you'll be done by 5 or 6, so that even though there's a deadline, you won't be as much bothered by it. But then
Hmm.
when you put certain pressures or certain deadlines on yourself, you can't really get out of it, even if it's 5 or 6 p.m. You will have to deal with that. And I think I was actually very much, as I told you, like I was in very hyper productivity mode because I was seeking that fulfillment out of my job in the other thing which I was doing. Like I was constantly seeking that. So I was doing that, and I was obviously there were issues with a lot of mental health issues as well, like stress and everything else. So I don't think that I was a perfectionist. I was barely managing things, but what I did was I ensured that whatever I'm doing, one thing I need to focus on. So if at the time it's my job, I used to focus on that, and I used to put everything aside. And then there were times when I used to focus on certain other things. For example, like there were like a couple of projects which need to be got done. So I used to take leave from the office in the advance itself. Like because I knew that okay, there are certain deadlines on other graphic projects if I'm doing. So I would take leaves in that and manage it that way. And I used to manage like okay, I'll have 2 days here, 3 days here, and that's how I'll do that. So I think I did it with a bit of planning certain times. So I think that helped me a bit, I would say. But there were times that okay, I need to focus on one thing at one time, like because uh, otherwise your mind just goes haywire. Like
Hmm.
that's the only way I found myself peace in focusing on one thing at a time. And I did not do any time blocking. I wasn't very good with my routines, and I also read Atomic Habits to improve on
Hmm.
that. But I don't think actually I took it into consideration in an actual routine. But
Hmm.
I think you're right with the slow mornings. Like that's something which I have started doing now after quitting my job. Like I now take my mornings very slow, and because I think that's one thing which affects your nervous system quite a lot. Starting with that sudden like pressure and like working directly working. So I completely agree how slow mornings can really help you in the long run.
Yeah, I think for me, my main issue, even until recently, was like if I prepare a plan, then if I don't achieve it, then maybe it's just a perfectionist inside me, like
Mm.
which wants to achieve everything. And if I don't get it done, then I will just get mad the next day, and then like I will stop doing everything. It's like you want to achieve perfectionism, and then
Mm.
after when you don't do it, then your procrastination starts. So I was on that
Yeah.
loop for a while, and then recently I'm like, okay, it's fine, even if I'm putting 1 hours a day, it's still better. So it was so
Yeah.
hard for me to rewire that in myself.
Yeah.
And I think everyone goes through that, maybe not even in architecture, like any profession or anything. So I think it's more like a human, what it's called, habit, I don't know.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
true. I think so. I also can agree on so many parts here, especially the procrastination loop. That actually was less when I was working in the job. Like being very honest, because there I did not have as much time. So I knew that I had to do it in the morning. Like three things I have to do. I'll do it in the morning. I'll get done with it because otherwise I won't have time, right?
Hmm.
But as soon as I quit my job, I thought like, okay, I'll have better control on my routine now. But I fell into this loop of procrastination, and I like stopped taking, like if one task is taking few hours, more than few hours, I started thinking, oh my God, it's taking too long. Is it even worth it? Should I do something else, or should I do something which, is better use of my time at the time? So I fell into this procrastination loop, and then did not do until and unless there was a deadline attached to it. So I think I was also like crashing on a lot of things. This happened after quitting my job. So it was very weird to me because I was like, I thought I will have more control on my time once I'll have everything in my control. But that wasn't the case. And I think one thing which I would have to blame to architecture school is that the idea of working only during deadlines, like, and because you have so many deadlines, you, to feel yourself normal, you do procrastinate, like, because otherwise you would feel pressure on every
Hmm.
single day, right? So I think it's a procrastination which is to make you feel like, oh yeah, you could do it, or feeling more in control that I could take care of that later on. But I think what it created was like a system in our heads to not work until unless tomorrow is the deadline. Like, especially for me, like
Hmm.
that weird feeling that because I've worked on competition design, this is something which I've seen in my design competition work. Design competition, even though I start so early, even though no matter how many meetings you have with the team months before, you won't really start any production 1 week prior.
Hmm.
And then you have just one tick, 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 days are going by, and then you spend hours and hours. Like I'm spending 12 hours a day on my laptop every single day, 5 days straight, and like in that hyper productive mode, but you're also pressured, but you also want to do. So that's not when you get your best work, to be
Hmm.
really honest. Like you are working under pressure essentially. But I think the idea of working into deadlines is so much there that you essentially like have to do it at the time. So I think it's a very unhealthy and toxic habit, which I personally fell in during my architecture graduation school, and this overconfidence which you get for some reason that you will be able to achieve it in one night, which is not the case, which is
Yeah.
never the case. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
everyone would agree on this part, because even when I did my design competitions, I was kind of like that. And it's also not just I wanted to do it. I feel like the whole team, because like you talked about the architecture school grooming us in that way, so everyone had the similar pattern. And I personally, I'm not that kind of person who want to push on the deadline. Most of the time I try to put my plans together, but when it's a teamwork, then like you cannot just do it by yourself. And
yeah.
I think that's one of the thing I hate about architecture. I mean, hate is a very strong word, but I feel like sometimes I really hate architecture because like I'm not able to manage my fitness and I'm not able to manage
Hmm.
my health. And then I'm going after something which I feel like it's very fulfilling, and I'm working 12 hours a day to achieve that design competition or
Yeah.
whatever's the deadline is. And then later when I'm done, maybe I will feel a little bit better, but at what cost? That was my always question.
Oh, I think that's so true. Like, I can't believe that you said that because this is exactly what I face during my work also. Because the work and the productivity happens in bursts. So it's not like on a very regular interval, like regularly you are trained to spend few hours, but nice solid flow work during those few hours. I think you're groomed into like thinking that okay, first few days you can just do the relaxed work, and then when it's the submission time, you just have to produce, produce, produce. Like I don't know, not just in architecture schools. I think it's a case in a lot of offices as well. Like I've seen that firsthand. That when the project starts, we have like 6 weeks. So first few weeks, yeah, we're doing that. Everyone is chill, and like people are thinking that we do it. That overconfidence is like, oh yeah, we do it, but it's not practical. And everybody's productivity or everybody's when they are like suddenly on that deadline or like suddenly when you have that pressure on your head, that's when people start working and producing, and that's when you are supposed to like forget everything else about your life, like as you said, like the fitness, the food, everything. So that happens to me every time I have a project, every time I have a competition. So there are days that I have to excuse myself that, oh, I can't go to the gym today, I have to focus on this, I have to do this, let me order from outside because I can't afford few hours making meals now. Because and that happens every time. So and I think that's true, very very true. That it's not a very good balance of a actual work life productivity. You feel that you're working towards something productive, but then once the project ends, you also feel guilty that you couldn't take care of your body better, and especially like other parts of your mental health. So it's like you try to chase one thing and the other thing gets away. So we're always chasing different parts.
Yeah, I think the same thing happened to me recently when I am taking my architecture licensing exam. So my goal when I started on November, so I think I haven't told anyone in this channel yet. So because I was thinking to make a video series for that, and probably when I release the video, that would already be up,
Mm,
so I can talk about it. And
okay.
so on that, I started studying on November. So my goal was like, I'm going to manage my workout, my food, and then my studies, all of them. And then
Mm.
initially I was doing pretty good. And also like my approach was like, I'm going to take it very slowly initially. So I was studying like maybe 1 hours a day initially. And then it gradually went up. It went up to like 2.5 hours, 3 hours a day until like January. And
Mm.
the but then when I realized that on January I was trying to be perfectionist again. So I was trying to check mark my workout, my
Mm.
studying habit, and my food as well, and that was creating another pressure. and
Yeah.
and then I realized like I was getting very fatigued before my exam,
Mm.
and I was kind of burnt out 1 week before my exam. So I didn't want to study at all 1 week before my
Oh.
exam. And and like I have a mentor who was helping me, and thank you so much
Mm.
to him as well. And then he kept me checked throughout the process. But the issue was like, because of that hyper productivity or whatever I was doing at that point, burnout was 1 week before the exam, and I was not sure like
Yeah.
if I'm going to pass it or not. And but
Yeah.
thankfully I took exam and I passed 2 out of 3, and I was very happy with that. But then I felt like after doing that for 3 months, now I'm realizing more of my own habit pattern, like how to
Yeah.
tackle that. So I think journaling your own habit regarding that is
Mm.
also really helpful, like to understand yourself first, like how you can do better. For you, like for example, you are very good in the morning, and for me it's
Yeah.
like I'm really good in evening. So I think
Mm.
for architecture students as well, it's just my suggestion that like you should
Yeah.
also think it in that way. And I think one of
Correct.
my biggest regret as an architecture student when I was doing my undergrad was I was never able to go and explore Nepal. It's just such a beautiful country, and my friends, they used to go every break they had. And then I
Yeah.
always thought that I'm gonna learn, for example, like AutoCAD this break, and then like do better the
Oh.
next time. So I was just doing that. But I realized like for maybe everyone should manage their time, have some life as well as an architecture student. So what do you think about it? Like, did you have anything like that?
Yeah, I think you're so right because I also never really explored India. The only time I actually got to explore a bit about India or a little bit different cities was just before my thesis in architecture college because I had to do some case studies. So me and a couple of other friends, like we went on a trip to multiple cities just so that we could explore different case studies because we had to do some case studies. So at the time, that was the time I think we actually went and explored a bit of different cities. But apart from that, during the college, I don't remember me traveling as much. Very rarely, like because as you said, like breaks were for something else, and also I was living outside in a different city to study architecture. So for me, breaks were supposed to go home and just spend the time at home. So I think I did not have that luxury at the time to explore and travel as much. But I think I'm also not into traveling as much. Like I personally like to travel only uh, to few places, but spend soft and like like more time and like slow time,
Hmm.
not in a checklist kind of a way, sort of thing. So that's also one of the reasons I think for me I see traveling very differently. But I think traveling for architecture students and how it can shape up the way you see spaces is a very big game changer because that's what I have realized after traveling every time to a different city. Even though you don't go on an agenda of an architectural visit or something, you still get some key takeaways from that city. So I think it's a very good way if you want to spend certain times, even though you think that, oh, you should be spending more time in learning software or things like that. I think even though you'll be traveling, you'll still be learning something. So it just won't be as tangible as you would do in a software training.
Hmm.
But I would say that it's more about learning the intangible stuff during those breaks as well. And yeah, I think apart from the thing which you said, like having those times for deciding those times that what works best for you, that also doesn't work in a lot of architecture student because I also feel like they don't have luxury as much because of the school timings, the restrictions, because not everyone wants to wake up early when you're in that age group as well. So
Yeah.
I think so they don't have that much luxury. Also, I think a lot of people like to work in groups. I don't know how it works in the West as much, but in the subcontinent, like everyone like to work in groups at night, like especially if you are living in a different city in like hostels or things like that. So everyone is awake together, and then everyone is working together at night. So even though you're not a night person, you still end up being awake for the most part of the night, just because everyone else is working, and then you feel more productive during those times as well. So I think it's a very two-way sword, like two-way thing
Hmm.
for students, that how can they manage and how can they get their like own personal like flow time. So it depends on quite a lot of factors, I would say,
Yeah.
in that case. But if you're doing masters, I would definitely say that's when you should start recognizing what are your flow times
Hmm.
or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So we are talking about traveling. So it's time to talk about your immigrant journey as well, because you traveled like the whole different part of the world to the London. So tell us more about how was your experience? How did it started?
Yeah, that's a nice question here, because I have lived so many years outside of my home, and I started my masters in 2016. It was immediately after my graduation. So I finished my graduation, and I immediately went for my master's in the same year. Master's course was for 1 year, and I specifically chose London because London was a city where I always wanted to come and study. Because even in like I remember very clearly. I think it was during my first year or second or third year. I remember like when I just bought my new laptop, and the only wallpaper I used to put was London, like Big Ben. Like that's the only wallpaper I ever had.
Hmm.
Because I was always so fascinated with the
Hmm.
city, and I really loved the city even before coming here. So it was a no-brainer that I really want to go to London. Like I did not use a lot of practical tools to assess like what was the best city, what's the best college. I didn't do that really. I just did a very brief research on universities, very brief research, and I came across University of Westminster. The reason I chose it at the time was because it was providing two international trips to Europe, study trips. So I thought like it was a great exposure. The university sits in the central London, and it's also a really nicely like located university. So I thought that would also help me a little bit more in the getting the exposure of the city. So I think those were just a few factors I addressed at the time, and I decided to come to London. I did not really do a lot of research on what the job market is after my masters. What is the return of investment? What is the visa situation for international people who want to work in there? So I personally did not do all of these. And I had suffered because of that. Like I won't say suffer; it was a learning. I think so, but I think it would have been better, and that's what I now guide people. I tell people if somebody is asking me, you should do all of this because you can't really afford mistakes like what I have done in my career trajectory. So I used a little bit of my brief understanding. I came to University of Westminster. I studied for a year here, and then when I came to finding a job, the issue was obviously the timing when the course ends. And at the time in 2016-17, when I did my masters, we did not have any visa which would let students to stay back in the country. Even when you finish the job, you can stay back in the country for a couple of years and then find a job. We did not have at that point. You finish your course and you just get 4 more months, and then you have to leave the country. So almost like 1.5 year, I would say, less than that, to stay in the country and to finish your master's and also find a job. Now, the problem with that was I finished my course in September, and then you're supposed to find a job by January, which is not a very recruiting, like not a recruiting season, because the recruiting season actually starts from March. So politically, it was not the best time to use like to go to UK to get a job because first of all, if you do not have any experience, or even if you have experience, you'll find a lot of other challenges like UK experience, UK relevant work, UK relevant portfolio. So you can't really do that in the 4 months of that, and I did not do that. So at the time, of course, I tried in the few months to find a job. But I think by the end of November or December, I had given up. Like I knew that I wasn't gonna get any job because their Christmas is there. So I decided to come back, and that's when I came back. I came back in 2018, and I decided to work in India. So I was working in Mumbai as an architect first, and then in Pune in an urban design studio like CBRE. So, and then I came back in 2021. So at the time when I came in 2021, by the time the laws had changed, so now they were providing a 2 year additional visa with your education degree, which is called PSW, which is post study visa, post study work visa. So that's when I decided, like, let me try again to go back as a student, so that I would get like the 2 additional years, and in those 2 additional years, of course, I could get a job and get sponsored, etc. So I did that, and then I came here again to study again in University of Westminster itself because university is really nice. So I came back and I was studying construction project management for my second master's. So, but in the first semester itself, I realized that this is not the course for me. Um, I thought it would teach certain other types of management, like, certain something else. Like, I think again, like the course and my expectations didn't really match. And then I sort of, after first semester, decided that I should find a job immediately. So I started updating my portfolio, and then I think within a few weeks of updating my portfolio, I got an interview at Gensler. I got my second interview at Gensler, and I did not even have to finish my whole course at the second course, and I got a sponsored job at Gensler, and I would have to give the credit to my portfolio because I remember the interviewing, like people who were interviewing, so they mentioning how good my portfolio was, mentioning in both the interviews. So I think that made quite a lot of change for me. That okay, I updated my portfolio, spent a lot of time on it, and then got a sponsored job. So then you can get sponsored job as an international immigrant either for 3 years or directly for 5 years. So that's how the route of working in a different country as if you're an immigrant. That's how it could work in the UK. So, but now again, the rules are changing. Again, there are some new rules UK comes up with. So I think last year they changed the rule that they have put a minimum threshold of salaries, that if you're an international immigrant, this would be the minimum salary you need to have. But there are other caveats in that as well, like you can do this, blah blah blah, or something. But I think more or less they're making it more and more difficult. I would say for people to get sponsored jobs nowadays, and in architecture, the pays isn't anywhere very good any which ways. So I think increasing that salary is just making more difficult for international immigrants in the UK to find a job. Also, I feel like there are other challenges which I did not have to face because I was not an architect, because I was doing urban design and I was doing like finding jobs in urban design as an urban designer. But if you're doing architecture or any specialization specifically in architecture, then UK has its own set of, I would say, standards in architecture called Part 1 architect, Part 2 architect. So then you are trying to find jobs in those categories and finding yourself fit in those, because matching up your education, international education to UK education can be sometimes challenging, and you don't know what job to apply for. So I think if you're looking for UK, you have to search thoroughly what part 1 means, what part 2 means, and what part 3 means. And also, it's not very easy to get the AR, like architect designation in the UK. You have to do part one, part two, part three. And there's also a different body called ARB. So you have to get registered with ARB as well, apart from REBA. So I think there's a lot of, I'm not very fully acquainted with all those details, but I think there's a lot of other details and um, like things to catch up on if you are looking for masters in specifically architecture. So I think that's what my
Hmm.
suggestion would be. But yeah, I think my journey was not very linear. I had to come back to India because obviously I did not do all these research beforehand. But the second time when I went back, I knew at least the kind of job I was going to look for, the kind of portfolio I was going to make about, and the kind of at least I had certain things in my head that I'm going to apply only for the companies which are sponsoring. So that's the easiest way to get out of my like easiest way in your route. I would say in your route if you're looking for getting settled as well, because there's a route called ILR, so which basically means indefinite leave to remain. So essentially, you can get that if you work 5 years straight with a sponsored employee. So after 5 years, you don't really need a sponsorship. So that's so your ILR can start as soon. So the graduate visa doesn't include that. So
Hmm.
that was also one of the reasons I thought like, okay, let me not use my graduate visa, but rather just directly get a sponsored job from the employer. So I was finding the companies which would sponsor and then applying there specifically.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think as an immigrant, like wherever you go, either it's be UK or US, like you have to navigate the whole different system to figure out
Yes.
about it. And even talking about like in UK, you were talking about part one, part two, and part three. I was doing kind of research about it, and I think part one and part two, it's basically about your education. I'm not entirely sure, but I think it was about education, and part three was more about the professional practice. Um,
Yeah.
and I
Correct.
think, yeah, I think so. And then like ARB, similar to ARB in the US, we have NCARB, and they are
Okay.
basically like a body which will determine the exams, what kind of exams you have to take to be a licensed architect. And I got to know about this because currently NCARB and ARB, they have a mutual agreement that if you are a licensed architect in the US, then you could be licensed architect in the UK.
Oh
Because
wow.
yeah, because of that agreement, yeah, I think you could translate your license up to part two, and I think you got to
Hmm.
take part three in the UK if you are planning to move to UK from the US. So I think
Yeah.
that's kind of like one advantage of NCARB
Um,
US license. I'm not sure.
I don't think so because
Hmm.
part three. So if you don't have part three, you're still not going to be architect. So
Hmm.
you can be an architect back in the US if you finish your NCAR, as you said,
Hmm.
right? You can still use the license and you're a licensed architect there. But
Hmm.
you won't be a licensed architect back
Yes.
in the
Yeah.
UK. You still have
Yeah.
to do part
Take
three.
part three.
So
Yeah.
part three is again another
Hmm.
I think it's a year, 1 year long or something. But you have to give certain exams in that and clear up certain number of hours of professional work, and then you get that part three
Hmm.
registering. But again, like you would have to invest some money to
Hmm.
get that part three. So yeah, I think so. That's again being an architect in the UK. They're just it's just not as simple. So that's
Yeah.
also an issue, and I think for a lot of people, if they have gotten into architecture, they finished the part one, which is essentially, I would not say exact equivalent to bachelor's because the bachelor's over here is for 3 years, and back I think in subcontinent most countries is 5 years.
Five. Yeah.
So, but here part one basically means your 3 years of graduation, and then you work as a part one, and then you work for 2 years, and then you can do a part two, which is your master's. So essentially, you do your part two after 4 or 5 years, and then after part two. So basically, I would say if an architect who has studied 5 years from India or Nepal, they come here and they do a master's degree, which is part two registered degree, like a like from university, which is accredited, or part two masters, which is very specific. You have to check, and usually the part two masters are 2 years long. but the other masters, which are not part two, are just 1 year long. So if you really want to have that part two, which I would think, which would make sense if you want to keep the conventional architecture, pursue that conventional architecture. I think it would make more sense to have that 2 years of degree, which says part two, and then you can apply for a part two work, part two sort of jobs. Then you work as a part two job, and then after a year of part two job, you can then enroll in another university and then do part three as a part time. So part three is generally part time. So even if you're working as a part two on the side, you can still do part three. And some companies and some employers actually they do sponsor that. So they do sponsor it, and no one gets like sponsored people. So they sponsor your part three essentially. So there's a contract, of course, internally, and then you finish your part three, and then you can get an architect job or the position of architect, which essentially pays a bit better than part one or part two architectural assistant. So part two and part one are always called architecture assistant, but not architect. So it's after the part three you can finally use the word architect, and that also, of course, getting registered with ARB, and you also pay them. I think it's a monthly or yearly fee. So similar to what happens in India, also they take a fee from COA, Council of Architecture in India. So it's just like that, I think. Yeah, so there are some nuances, I feel, especially in the conventional architecture, not as straightforward. So all the immigrants, yes, we do not have the visa privileges. We also do not have a lot of other privileges and other, I would say, other stuff. We have to figure it out by ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. And so I was wondering, like, is there any kind of website or anything which could tell like the range of salary for an architect in the UK? Because in the US, there is a website, I think, for AIA, which is American Institute of Architect. I think they give like a range of salary for this much of experience or whatever. I mean, it depends on the state or city or everything, but just to have some basic idea, is there anything like that?
I think Reba must have. Reba does have part one, part two, part three salaries. So that Reba, I think Reba website must have it. But other than that, I think a lot of other private like recruiters, they keep posting certain ranges on like their LinkedIn, etc. But I think in UK as well, it's not very easy to put a number to your sort of I would say part one. So there's a minimum. I think it's a minimum. I'm sure they must have set certain minimum salary requirements. But I think it also varies in which part of the UK you're working. Because if it's in London, that's where major companies are, and London living expenses are quite high. So the companies already have to pay that minimum London living wages, which are different from other parts of the city, other parts of UK. So I think the London salaries would be definitely higher as compared to other parts of the UK. But again, living standards in London will be a bit higher as well. So I think that's how the salary ranges are. It depends on city as well, and it also depends on which part of UK you are in. But Reba website must have a minimum, I would say, minimum salary requirements.
Yeah, because I think like most of the international students, when they ask me questions about salaries, and I'm like, I'm not entirely sure about that because I can only tell what I have seen. So I thought like if there is any kind of website that could give more information, which US has it in AIA, so they must have something in Reba, maybe.
I'm sure Reba must have had something, but I also I think the starting salary of part one is not as good, I would say. Part two is also still better, but again, like it's not gonna be enough. I think that's I would say I won't put a number to it, but I would just say that I know the numbers which big companies and star architects also pay to their like to their employees who are just gotten in, like the fresh graduates or fresh masters students. I don't think that's a good number. So that is also a lot of debate. It's a topic of debate nowadays. Like the minimum wages of architects in here are also not matching like minimum wages across the board, like across sort of thing. So if you're working as many hours, so I think a lot of people are comparing that too. So essentially, yeah, I would recommend people, if they are looking for masters, is try to find a specialization, because then when you do a specialized, in like, do a specialized course, then you can apply for those specialized roles rather than just the generic
Hmm.
part two or part one, etc. I think that will just give you an upper hand. For example, like urban design, I think that's the salary of an urban designer, starting urban designer salary. I think it's higher than a part two.
Hmm.
So that's one thing, and other specializations, of course, also could help, like sustainability or landscape or computational, etc. So my suggestion would be, if you're spending 2 years, do a specialized course, because you've already studied 5 years. Especially people from subcontinent, 5 years of architecture is good enough to learn more about architecture. Then you go on and learn a little bit more into specialized parts of architecture.
Hmm. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that kind of makes sense to me as well, because I did my master's here, and I did my master's of architecture, which was kind of very similar to what I did in my undergrad. So basically,
Oh.
my 2 years was very similar to what I was doing. I mean, it was different in a way that I was learning more about computational design, sustainable design, and stuff, because I was picking studios and electives
Mm.
like that. So in that way it was different, but at the same time, like, it was not specialized in itself.
Yeah.
So I think the caveat for me was like, if I wanted to work as an architect, then I had to study masters of architecture, because I have to go through licensing procedure and then like get
Yeah.
my hours, and even my
Correct.
education has to be NCARB accredited and
Yeah.
everything. So if you want to work as an architect in the US,
Yeah.
then you have to go through that education. But if you feel like you want to be more specialized, for example, computational designer, and you
Mm.
don't need the role of an architect, then
Yeah.
maybe that specialized course would make more sense, at least in the US. I cannot speak for the UK, but
Yeah,
uh,
it's the same in the
mhm,
UK as well. Like, of course, if you want to use the AR as your, that if you want to use that, so I think you have to do that part too. And I think nowadays they do teach. They are focusing more on computational aspects in most of the masters too. So I think, yeah, that way you could do it, and you can also always take up specialized courses on the side to create your own specialization, or to niche down a little bit more onto what exactly you're working on. And you can still then use a conventional degree, and then you can do specialized courses. Like, there's quite a lot nowadays. So I think that way, that is also one way to go about, I would
mhm.
say. Hmm.
Yep. So I think like we covered so many
Hmm.
topics, and
Yeah.
let's just like have some key lessons or whatever, and then we can wrap this up. So what would be your like one suggestion who is looking to make a good portfolio? Like, if you want to summarize few things, what should they do? The first step.
I think it's so. I won't say like one thing you should do. I think there's just a combination of a few things which you could do, which could be, of course, a really good layout. I think that's because that's an easy thing in a broader perspective. I think layouts are very easy to create. So a really clean layout, which is gonna make your portfolio automatically look more sophisticated and professional. The other thing is the flow and the narrative of your portfolio, like how your projects are starting. Where do you want to start your project from? Do you want to start your project directly from the design, or do you want to show the process and evolution of the design? So, like, obviously, using a using a sound narrative or a proper flow for your projects, and then that's something I would definitely recommend, even if it's an internship portfolio. That's how we should be doing. The third thing is use of colors and graphic elements as not like, it's a tool which you can use to highlight and enhance certain things, but don't overuse it, I would say. So keep things minimal. I would, and because if you're spend, especially when you're starting out, you feel like you need to do everything in one, everything for your portfolio. You want to use bright colors also. You want to use these graphics also. So I would say process of elimination would be the best way to go about. Just eliminate things which are not needed. Let your drawings speak for themselves. So make sure your drawings are clear and visually engaging, and they do match up the standards of the other candidates which will be applying. So you won't be competing with just your peers in your college or class. You would be competing with like anyone. So essentially, when it comes to portfolio, because I've reviewed a lot of portfolios, I still do one-on-one mentorship. I have interviewed people. I have seen hundreds of portfolios. So it's always about like the first few seconds of a portfolio, which gives away that if I want to keep looking at this portfolio or not. Like, so that is why the first few seconds of your, or the first few pages of your portfolio can keep, like, can make up that. And more often than not, your portfolio will not be the only portfolio. So that it will be a part of, it will be a part of larger group of portfolios. So it's always going to be relative, not subjective. So keep that in mind that you need to be best for what you do, but you also need to keep in mind what others best. So
Hmm.
that's something how I would talk about
Yeah.
portfolios.
Yeah. So another thing, do you mind looking into my portfolio if you
Yeah,
want
yeah,
to?
sure.
All right.
Of course.
Okay. Because I just wanted to take the permission because like you run this whole architecture candy and you get paid for that. And I don't want to just ask it randomly. So,
No. It's always so lovely to talk to you, and you invited me on your podcast. So it's
mhm.
the least I could do. Definitely would love to.
All right. So, yeah, let me share my portfolio because I also made a video about like how I did my portfolio in my YouTube
Wow.
channel. So I thought like maybe getting your eyes on that could also be helpful for me and other people as well who were seeing
Hmm.
my portfolio. So let me just share
It will be
that.
very interesting. I think a lot of people want to see what the reviews look like. So
Mhm.
this is going to be quite engaging. I hope so.
Yeah. Okay. So this is my portfolio. So what do you think about the cover page itself?
I think it's really nice. I like the fact that it's a bit abstract
Hmm.
because abstract covers are generally my favorite covers, not the ones which are very direct with some render or some essential like some plan or something. So I think it's pretty cool. I don't know what
Hmm.
exactly does it mean.
Yeah, I think you will
Um,
know when we reach at the end of the portfolio because it's a part of the project that I
oh wow,
have.
that's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also like you can be brutally honest. You don't have to like butter up anything because like as an architect, I think we should be able to take criticism as well. So whatever you feel, please let me know.
Sure.
And and then after, so I have added my resume in it as well because when I was talking with people, everyone told me that it's always good to just send one file with resume and portfolio in it rather
Yeah.
than having like two different files because like people are not gonna like they don't have enough time to go through all the files and download and everything. So
Yeah.
this is my resume, and then I try to highlight some of my awards and then my
Mm.
professional experience because that's I think what mattered for the people who are
Yeah.
looking. So that's what I was doing here, and then
Yeah. I think
after.
that's good. Cool.
Mhm. And then after a little bit about the work and then content of how many projects I have, just a slight introduction. And then, like you said, I have a white space in it as well.
Mm.
And I think these are the things I started learning later on when I moved to the
Yeah.
US. Otherwise, like
Yeah.
when I was in Nepal, I was never doing that. Like when you look at my old portfolios, it was all cluttered up and
Mm.
like all kind of informations in it. And then after um I have this project, and generally I
Mm.
start with my render because I
Okay.
feel like that's my one of the major skill that I have. So that's why I want to show my I want to put my best
Mm.
foot forward. So
Yeah.
that's how I start. And this was like one of the best project in my opinion for myself. So I started with
Cool.
that,
Yeah,
and
it looks nice.
mhm. uh okay, give me a moment. It's stuck again. Okay, it's back. And then after, I started with a little bit of a write up and then a bird's eye view
Mm.
telling about the project. And I don't think I'm going to explain all about the project. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
giving you the brief
Yeah.
of what it looks like. And then
Yeah.
after, a little bit of conceptual manifesto of how it started, and then the diagram.
Mm.
And
Correct.
then after, some of the drawings
I
exploded
think this
econometric plans.
editorial effect is something which happens after you get your masters and you see how
Mm-hmm.
your lectures are, like, how they perceive and how they are guiding you throughout, like, things. So I think that's when you start catching up on these things,
Mm-hmm.
and it happens with everyone who has done their masters. And if it's not happening, then you need to go back, I would say.
Yes.
So this is very clear. Like, it automatically gives up that, I would say, very professional look to your portfolio. I would just add up a little bit of header and footer sort
Mm-hmm.
of things, because when you use a lot of negative spaces, it's very difficult sometimes to make a structure out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't have that, it can look like it's floating, that
Mm-hmm.
effect. So when you add like a footer or a header, like page numbers to it, it just gives that one elevation, like,
Mm-hmm.
towards a structure. Like, even
Mm-hmm.
if you are not following any structure, but still gives away that there is a structure.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I can work on that later on when I'm
Yeah.
updating. And then after, a little bit of a drawings, and then there is this one big section. And this was
Mm.
also like one thing that I wanted to highlight. So I just put it in the whole page. And similar thing here as well. A little bit of renderings and then drawings, a little bit of write up, and putting the renderings at the end to give more info about the project. And I kind of follow the similar pattern
Yeah.
to rest of the other project. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, that's the layout. Like, that's
mhm,
what I was talking about, layout. Because if you
mhm,
have the layout, it makes it so easy to put together other projects because you're following one
mhm,
thing. And then at the same time, it also helps the portfolio look more professional.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. And this is another project, and this is a bit small project, so more like a conceptual project. And you might have realized until now that I am
Mm.
mostly focusing on the black and white drawings. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not very fond of colors. I mean, I do use
Mm.
colors, but mostly in renderings. And for the
Yeah.
drawing part, I just wanted to have monochrome. So I think I realized that that was kind of my style. Like,
Yeah.
that's what my personality is as well. And I
Mm.
think I just wanted to tell the story from my portfolio that this is my personality. Like,
Yeah.
and I think that's one of the important thing to tell from portfolio. What do you think about it?
No, absolutely. I think black and white drawings will always be better than, like, multicolored, non good looking drawings. I mean, non good looking, I mean, like, something which makes it look funny.
Mm-hmm.
So, from that point of view, if you don't do Photoshop nicely, I always tell people that just use black and white drawings, just use line hierarchies. It would be good enough, and good annotations should make your lines readable at the end of the day. So I think that's a good way to go about. And also, I see that your renders are also, even if you put multiple renders on one page, it's not something which is very cluttered. It's still editorial. It's the white spaces are actually framing it nicely. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something I really really like about the how the renders have been placed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me just move through this real quick.
Yeah, yeah. But it's
And
overall, it's looking pretty cool, to be honest. Like, I like it. Like, it's giving, it's definitely giving a master's level portfolio and
mhm,
a bit of professionalism and the design thinking. So I think these are the key things generally you want to tick off when you're making a professional portfolio. I'm not sure, like, maybe some more detailed drawings
mhm,
also, just in case, like, you're already working.
mhm,
But if people are, like, looking for a specific job or something, it would be also good to just put in some more detailed construction sets also to show that a level of detail orientation to sort of. So I think that's also could be a good addition. Not just your portfolio is pretty
mhm.
good, but, like, moving forward, this style, if you're following the type of projects, and then in the end, could be finished off with that.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that really makes sense. I mean, I wanted to do that, but for my most of my projects, I actually didn't have much of a detailed drawing, and I was already at the crunch time, like you said, like at the
Yeah.
end. So I'm like, let me just get done with whatever I
Yeah.
have for now. So I think it's like making portfolio is also like proper planning, because like you need to start
Yeah.
thinking very early on about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I still
Mhm.
didn't understand your cover and we finished it. So do you want to
Yes, I was.
explain a bit about
Yeah,
it?
I was about to tell. So did you? So this is the shape that I use in my cover.
Hmm.
If let me just take you
Is it
back.
something to do with golden proportion? Like,
So this is the cover, right? And
yeah.
then on the last page, so I was working on this one design competition, and then we decided to create a form like this. And the reason was like, so if you go to my concept, so we
Hmm.
were doing like a more like a how we can show global warming from the design itself. So this
Hmm.
was done from the bamboo, and then it
Hmm.
was symbolizing a little bit like a wave, and this is like a hut, and then it's
Okay.
kind of taking over the peoples and civilization. So more like a representation of how global warming is affecting
Yeah.
it. And then like on the plan level, you can see like kind of
Hmm.
um, uh, like a circular arc and stuff, but it kind of turned out to be pretty cool image
Yeah.
on top. So that's why I thought that could be something that could tell my story in terms of portfolio, because
Hmm.
I'm not just about black and white, but also like I can push myself into some different way of design thinking as well. So that's what I was trying to
Yeah.
communicate from my first cover page.
Correct. I
Hmm.
think so. This clarity of drawings and concepts, it's pretty cool because when you start saying, I could
Hmm.
totally make sense of what it is, and it's pretty cool. A lot of portfolios actually do miss that. They think that they put the sketches and people would read it,
Hmm.
and they would not have to explain it completely. So I think that is also something which I know it's a bit difficult because you it makes sense in your head, so probably at that point, getting a bit of feedback from multiple people and see if they're understanding the concepts without you having to explain and go
Hmm.
about it. So I guess that also helps quite a lot in
Hmm.
getting that design thinking conveyed through the drawings also.
Yeah, I think that's really important because, like, I don't know if this image conveyed that message or not. Did you get it? Like
Yeah,
that
I got
water
it.
and stuff. Hmm.
The miniature
Hmm.
vignettes actually did show that. Okay, yeah, and
Hmm.
obviously I've written that also in the
Yeah,
paragraphs.
yeah.
So if I'm reading that and I'm seeing the drawings,
Hmm.
there's a sync in between.
Hmm. Hmm.
A lot of times I've seen people just put in graphics. They don't even put any paragraph attached to it.
Hmm.
They just think that, we'll put concept graphics. This is how it is. And then they explain that. So
Hmm.
when I do these one-on-ones, my half an hour goes in people explaining their projects,
Hmm.
which I feel like totally miss the point because the drawings should be very clear. Our bread and butter are drawings, lines, which we make. So it has to be so clear enough and visually engaging that you don't have to explain that because when you're sharing these portfolios for your job or masters, you're not there to explain the whole portfolio. So the
Yeah,
reader has to read it through. So I think that's something which you usually gain after few years of experience
yeah,
and few portfolios. So
yeah,
so
yeah.
you have to
Totally.
start somewhere. So, and your first portfolio will not be your last portfolio. I would say at least average portfolios you have to make to get your best portfolio
I
because that's
think
what I've done.
Yeah, I think same thing for me. I think I have prepared like four at least as much as I remember. And my
Hmm.
experience was like when I went to this career fair after my first year in architecture school,
Hmm.
and they were there to provide internship and job opportunities.
Hmm.
And then I took my previous portfolio. And then when I talked with people, I thought I was doing pretty good, but
Hmm.
later I didn't get any response from anyone about like internship or anything. And at that point, I was so frustrated, and I knew
Ah.
that there is something wrong with my portfolio and I have to work
Hmm.
on it. And after that, I started planning for my portfolio, like maybe right after when that happened. And
Yeah.
then I was taking courses and also like referring to your page and so many other pages in Instagram.
Yeah.
And that's how I got more um, idea about like a diagram should tell the story, and it should
Yeah.
not be like you gotta explain it. Yeah,
Yeah.
people who are seeing it, they should be able to see the flow, or maybe like go through text and kind of understand it. So I think
Yes.
that's really an important thing in portfolio as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think what happens is that not everyone is very open with in regards to the portfolio. So I think we spend so much time. That was me. Like I was a bit closed off for my portfolio related stuff, and I thought like I sent it to my few close friends, and they were like, "Oh wow, that's great! Like looks so amazing." It is not great. Like, and I look back at it now, it was the worst portfolio, So that's why I think like you should be open about it, and you should not be too attached to your portfolio making and that process. What you should be attached to what you're learning and what you're learning in that process, like not the portfolio itself. Keep yourself very open to updating portfolios, to updating your drawings, etc. And whoever is looking for jobs, and if in 3 months of time, if you don't get any response, and if you're just getting unfortunately and all the negative responses on your profile or application, that's the least amount of time you have to spend on one portfolio. Come back after 3 months, update your portfolio again, because that is what I've seen people here. Like time is running out, they want to apply for jobs, and they just keep applying and then keep
Hmm.
applying, keep applying. I'm like, are you looking back at your portfolio? You have so much time in between. Why not keep updating one page at a time? Keep updating one project at a time. So I think a lot of people are thinking that one time portfolio is done, my job is done. Now employer has to give me a job opportunity. That's not how it works. So I think keep it open. I had to rework on a lot of my master's level projects also for my portfolio. I in fact redesigned one of the bigger project because I was really interested in the design of it. So I thought, let me go ahead and redesign it completely, like redesign and like restructuring the layout and everything, urban layout, master plan layout. So I did that during COVID. I updated that project. I updated with more diagrams, and I added more diagrams. For the professional projects, I added my own conceptual graphics. I created more graphics. So I think that agility you have to have with your portfolio moving
Hmm.
forward. Yeah.
Yeah, even now I'm thinking I should also do some updates in my portfolio. Like you said, like when you look back to your portfolio, I think it's also because of growth. After some
Yeah.
point, you will start seeing it more differently. And maybe last time you think that that was your best, but now you feel
Mm.
like you could do even better. So yes, I think the key
Yeah.
takeaway is like you should not attach yourself so much with your work.
Yeah. Yes, that's
Yeah.
true.
So,
Yeah.
so before ending this whole fun podcast, I mean, I had so much fun. And
Same
how
here.
do you feel about it?
I feel so good. It was so refreshing, and I think it was a really, really meaningful conversation I've had in the longest time. So I'm glad that people will be seeing this all over, and maybe can get some takeaways from both of our learnings here.
Hmm.
But I really enjoyed it, and it was really one of the nicest conversations I've had in a long time.
Yep, absolutely. So I just have one final question, and this is kind of like my own question. So, what
Yeah.
advice do you think you should give to someone who is going after their own creative ventures outside of architecture? I mean, I wouldn't say outside of architecture, more like from their regular profession, daytime job.
Yeah. I think I personally see it's a creative outlet. So if your job is giving you that creative freedom and liberty to just explore, that's fine. But if it's not, you can always find an alternate to it. That's what you and me are doing here, finding alternate for our creative freedoms and liberties to like, to explore. So for them, I would say, yes, go for it. Don't overthink it. I would say if you're just starting out, don't overthink it. Like people are doing whatever they want to. So nobody is here to judge you. Nobody will remember your mistakes. Nobody is going to count how many times you have done something wrong or something. So I think that's one very important thing in the beginning you have to see is nobody's keeping a track of you and your wrong stuff which you're doing in the beginning. So use that as a momentum to build a momentum and then to build upon it and to grow on each day, like whatever craft you're using. Just make sure that you're improving on it, you're enjoying it more. So make sure that you're enjoying that part of it without overthinking it. Second thing is don't try to attach any outcome out of it because I feel like nowadays, obviously, it's quite easy for me to say as well, but it's very easy for us to attach our work's worth from external validation, which is the likes, views, etc. So I would say refrain from that, especially in the beginning. Do not attach its worth from any external validation. Attach its worth from what you are doing. You enjoy 2 hours making that stuff. That's enough. Don't try to add on other things to it. The other things will come in automatically. And I think also one thing which helped me in the beginning was I did not have any one agenda when I was exploring. Like, oh, I want to reach this goal, or I want to have this. I did not have one agenda. I was just being very open to whatever it was. Like, I was just exploring. I was just having fun at the time. So the most important part is just you have fun. You want to share it. Don't overthink it. Like, that's it. Automatically the paths will be clearer as the days go by. And I think it's a compounding effect. So a lot of people forget about it. It's a compounding effect. So whatever you make today will not give you the result tomorrow, but maybe in the future, 1 year down the line, it would have a compounding effect to it. And that's what I've seen. Like my posts certain times, they don't really get as many likes, like as much effort I've put in or as much views on the reels. Certain things I used to get attached to it quite a lot. But then what I have realized is some of the clients actually have come with that specific post that they want certain graphic, if I can make that. And that's when I realized like I was getting stressed about this getting this many
Mm-hmm.
likes, but this is actually getting me money in. You
Mm-hmm.
know, this is getting me client in. So I don't know if it's gonna give me direct linear result today or tomorrow, but it's not wasted. So I
Mm-hmm.
keep reminding myself that. So I think that is something which I would give as an advice. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever you're starting, just do not attach its worth to a very linear
Mm-hmm.
scale of validation.
Yep. All right. With all the fun conversation and all the key takeaways, I hope you guys got a lot of information to handle. And so I think we're gonna sign off here, and I will see you guys next time with another podcast. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Vishaka. And all right. Bye bye.